Oh my God. Look at this. Just it just falls apart. The paint, everything. There is so much stuff back here. So much to do. That's new. New spot. That's gone. Welcome back to the channel, folks. As you saw, her rocker panels are gone. And for 2022, I've been mulling the decision over. I'm not sure what to do. And the decision is, at what point do you look at something and you write it off and say, well, it's no longer feasible, I just get rid of it? Or when do you look at something and you say, well, I don't care about the cost, we got to repair it? That's what I'm facing. And to understand my idea of why I'm impartial or why I don't want to sell my Flex, come along as I explain my ideology on what I thought owning a vehicle would be like when I was a kid versus now that I'm an adult. When I was a kid in the 90s, late 80s, early 90s, mid 90s, hell, even the late 90s, cars didn't last that long. You had a car that had 50,000 miles on it, it was old. It was high mileage. People would trade it in. You had a car that had 70, 80,000 miles on it, the interior was starting to fall apart. The headliner was coming down. You get to 100,000 miles, you're lucky if all the damn body panels match the same color. You're lucky if the doors even stayed closed. I've been in some vehicles, some trucks, that were so beyond repair that when you made a left-hand turn, the passenger door went open. I never wanted to own a car that was like that. I always thought, why didn't people just fix their cars? Why is a squirrel throwing walnuts down at my dog? I never understood why people just didn't fix them. They drive them, they smoke inside them, that gets that nicotine yellowish tint on the inside of the windows and all over the interior. They will always do that, but yet in their garage, they'd be building a hot rod, a 57 Chuck Ford or whatever it may be. Looks immaculate, paint job, big engine, loud exhaust, but then treat their everyday car, run it into the ground. I never wanted to do that to my car. And when I would watch TV, when cable TV was a real thing, I always saw those shows like muscle cars or trucks or 4x4. They always took something from the junkyard and rebuilt it. That's what they did. And I always thought, well, I want my car to always be nice. And then I would go to car shows, or I'd see cars on the road. They'd have a historical plate on them, and they would look excellent. No rust. The paint was still shiny. People would show them off. And I said, that's what I want. To get to that, though, I had to find a car that I truly enjoyed driving. I'm not a materialistic person, but I had to find a car that I genuinely loved to drive. Up into my teenage years, I didn't really drive. Well, I got my license when I was 16, but I really didn't have the means or the success to buy what I wanted right away. My first car was an 85 Chevrolet Celebrity. And yes, the passenger door was a different color than the rest of the car. The car was gold, the door was blue. The interior was shot, but the headliner was kind of still together. I was happy that I was able to buy the car on my own for $600. I nursed it back to health. I learned a little bit of, I was mechanically inclined before driving, so I understood how engines really worked, but I really didn't have my hands in there doing mechanical work. I didn't have the experience. I understood what I was doing, I just didn't have that experience per se. But I did do my own oil changes on it. That's about as far as it went. The engine burnt oil like no tomorrow. I was working at Walmart at the time, and driving from my house to the Walmart, which is about a 15-mile drive, would burn all the oil in the engine. And I'd get to Walmart and my engine light would be on. I got older. I graduated high school. My parents co-signed for me for a 2003 Ford Focus. At least this car had all the body panels matching to be the same color. But it was a base model. It had crank windows. It had an AM FM radio. I was happy that I actually had a car that looked better. But it still didn't fill that void of, I love this car. It was cramped. The 2-liter 4-cylinder engine was okay, but it didn't have that spunk. It didn't have that boom, boom, let's go. It didn't have any of that. 2009, a few things, or before that, in 2007, I got a promotion at my current employer. And it was at that point I was able to meet part of my goal and that was to buy a car on my own without my parents' help. And that I did. I bought a 2007 Ford Focus, brand new. I felt proud of myself for that. That was in 2007. But it still didn't feel that uniqueness, that spunk of vroom vroom. It didn't fulfill any of that stuff. At least it had power windows and power locks, and I later added a sunroof to it, and back in the day, I had a system in it, 2 Alpine subs, 2,000 watts, and a little touchscreen double din radio that I put in. In 2009, to Michigan, to the Michigan Raceway for a NASCAR race. And when I was there, I had test drove a Flex, and I immediately fell in love. But I didn't really think anything more of it until 2011. 2011 is when I paid off my Focus. I owned it outright. I felt proud of myself, and I said, we're going to buy one more car, and that's it, because I don't want no more damn car payment. I'm done. So this car that I buy next has to be fun to drive. It has to be unique. It has to have room for people in it, and it has to be able to go to the big box hardware store and take a water heater home easily, or bring stuff home easily from like the hardware store, wood, whatever I may need, because I own a home. For 6 months, the last half of 2011, I did a lot of searching online. Part of my decision process was I busted my ass, paid off my Focus. I didn't want to get rid of it. I had the title in hand, and I thought, if I ever fall down on my luck, at least my car is paid for. It can't be taken away. I wanted a Ford Excursion, but 2005 Ford Excursions were still going for $25,000. They still wanted $500 a month. And they kept asking me if I was going to trade in my Focus, and I kept saying, no, I'm not doing that. It's too much money. So I started looking at Expeditions. Well, we're in $30,000 territory, and it's for a 2008 Expedition. I started doing some research, and the 5.4s were kind of troublesome with spark plugs. Now, at that time, my skill set of mechanics was kind of limited to just oil changes. I knew spark plugs, I knew how the engine worked, serpentine belt, alternator, I knew that stuff, but I didn't have any actual experience with repairing any of that, because up to that point, my Focus was brand new and it never gave me any issues. It only had 66,000 miles on it when I finally traded it in. I'm missing the dog again. 6 months of 2011 looking for a car to buy. And then I stumbled upon some videos on YouTube. I was looking at an F-150, and somehow EcoBoost came up. And I did some research on it. Oh, that looks cool, that's cool, okay. And then something triggered me. It was in January, I was still looking for cars, and the SUV category had a Flex. And the only time I ever drove one was 2009 when I was in Michigan, and I loved it. And I thought, well, you don't see those every day. They're cool. It's a wagon kind of SUV vehicle. You don't see them all the time. I started looking at the specs. It's got 2 turbos, twin turbocharged, 360 horsepower engine. It's got all-wheel drive. It can tow 4,500 pounds. This can seat 6 people. It was a limited model. I was in love. I was absolutely in love with it. It checked all my boxes. That night, I cleaned out my Focus, did a little detail on it, cleaned it up, vacuumed the carpet, gave it a quick rinse, found my title. I drove to the dealership the next day and immediately asked for a salesperson and immediately asked for this vehicle. I even gave them I even gave them the stock number of the vehicle. A little bit of waiting around. They had to find it. I was pumped. I was excited. They finally bring it around. We go for the test drive. I'm in heaven. I sit up. I sit high. The seats are comfortable. I have an RPM gauge because the Focus didn't have an RPM gauge. It was a base model Focus. I had power windows. I had power locks. And it had power. It was really fun to drive. First time I got on the interstate, the salesperson says, go ahead, lay into it. I laid all the way into it. Oh my God, I was in heaven. Never been such a powerful vehicle up until that point, ever. I had a huge smile on my face. I said, let's go back and talk a deal. They initially gave me only $4,000 for the Focus, and I said, well, it's already paid off and I have the title in my hand. I love the car, but I'll walk right out that door. Back and forth. They finally gave me $6,000 for my Focus. It was a one-owner vehicle. I had all service records because all the servicing for the oil changes was all done at Ford. I even bought the tires for it before I traded it in. It was done at a Ford dealership. I know that was a mistake. Anyway. So I knew it had a service history. I wanted what I wanted. They gave it to me. We get to the finance office. The guy tries to tell me or sell me an extended warranty. And I'm like, well, my Focus gave me 0 issues in the years that I owned it. In the 60,000+ miles that I put on it, I didn't have any issues. It's a Ford. I just shouldn't have any issues with this. It only has 25,000 miles on it. It still has a factory warranty for another 10, 11,000 miles. It'll be good. But then I'm looking out the window of the finance office and I'm looking at it and I'm starting to think, I'm looking on my phone, I'm like, well, this has a lot of electronics in it. More than my Focus ever had. This has a lot more drivetrain components too, more than the Focus had. So I decided to buy the extended warranty. I figured, what the hell? Drove home that day, showed my parents of what I was able to do because of my dad co-signing for me. Because he did that in 2005 for my graduation, I was able to work my way up, buy a house, and I was able to go to a dealership, point at a vehicle, and say, I want this vehicle, let's make a deal, or I won't. January of 2012. For the better part of the last 10 years, this Flex has been everywhere with me. Through the thick and through the thin. We've been to New York every year since 2014. 2015. Every year. 400 miles one way. One year it went to Cedar Point 2-3 times in a given week. Or even in a given month. It's been to the southern point of Ohio, as far south as you can go. It's been to Indiana. It's been to Detroit, Michigan, because the year that I bought it, the week that I bought it, I went to Detroit to go to the auto show. It's been everywhere with me. I also quickly learned how naive I kind of was on what maintenance this car really requires. Because in the first few years, it ate tires like no tomorrow. And back then, it had Goodyear Eagle RSAs. They only had like a 200 tread rating. I didn't know what that meant until I learned that that was a very soft tire and it didn't last very, very long at all. But I was barely probably barely making ends meet. Between this and other obligations that I had, it was a little bit rough. $300 a tire, they only lasted me a year. About to start shitting bricks. But I kept with it. I worked through it because I loved this vehicle. And even the gas mileage, back when gas was $3 a gallon, I always put premium in it. Well, premium to fill up is like $60, back then. I still stuck with it. Well, in 2015 then, I had that startup rattle. It's one of the first few videos I posted to YouTube because I couldn't figure out what the hell it was. And I would take it to the dealership because I had the warranty. I'm like, what does this sound? I always got brushed off. Always. Well, in 2015, I was going out of town. I was doing a pre-trip on my Flex. And I had noticed that one of the rear turbo oil lines was leaking oil. In a panic mode, because I know the turbos need oil to survive, and it's the rear one, I drove it to the dealer. And I said, well, it needs an oil change, so might as well I'll pay for an oil change. And while you're at it, while you have it, because I was dropping it off for service for the next day, I said, if you let it sit for 3+ hours and then you go to start it with the driver's side door open, listening by the ground, you'll hear a rattle upon startup. They did. They confirmed it did rattle. And then that started a 2.5-month ordeal with Ford, not the dealer, but Ford, to replace my engine. 2.5 months. At 85,000 miles. I've only had the car for 3 years, and I've already put 60,000 miles on it. I drive a lot. It was also at that point, maybe it's time to probably offload this vehicle. I mean, it's kind of high maintenance. The tires are expensive. And my warranty was only good for 100,000 miles. And that was it. I've only had the car for 3 years, and I'm already almost at the end of my warranty. But I talked myself out of it. There's a scratch. And I still paid on it. 2.5 months later, I get my Flex back. And I am happy. I am happier than a kid in a candy store. For the 2.5 months that I was driving, or the loaner car that I was driving was a Ford Fusion. I wasn't very happy with the Ford Fusion. Even less happy with the 4-cylinder that was in the Ford Fusion. But the dealer picked up the tab because the extended warranty only covered 10 days. That's all Ford company was going to cover. The dealer covered the rest of the time. So I really liked the dealer. They replaced the engine, and then I said, okay. I had to go and get all the service records because I went to Goodyear Tire Center to have the oil changed, like the oil life monitor said, whenever it hit 0, 7,500 miles. I thought nothing of it. But I had to go get the records for the oil, give them to Ford. They approved my warranty claim, gave me a new engine. And I thought, well, I made it through that. But if that's a sign to come, I need to be prepared for the next time. And it was moving forward while the engine was under warranty. I had the oil changed at a Ford dealership, just so I had record of them doing the oil change in case there was any other issue. My warranty when expired in 2016, I was over 100,000 miles. Still paying on this car, $500+ a month. I didn't care. I loved my vehicle. I learned how to not only wash the car, but do the 2-bucket stage washing, because before that, I just thought you get car shampoo and you wash it, and that was it. But I took better care to keep swirls out of my paint, so I do the 2-bucket washing. I learned how to do waxing on this. I learned how to do not waxing. What's the step before waxing? I can't think of the damn step. Clay bar. So I learned how to do the wash. I did a clay bar on it, and then I did the waxing to seal everything in. I learned how to do all that on this car. I thought, we're going to take care of this because this is going to be the car that it's going to be a historical vehicle to me. And this is going to be the car that's going to look immaculate. And anything that goes wrong, I'm going to fix it. I was at work one day on my lunch on YouTube, and I was watching the Motor Trend channel. and they were doing trucks episode, and they were rebuilding an engine for it. And I thought right then and there, I can do that, but I need the shop manual to do it because I don't know what I'm doing it right off the rip. I got on eBay, ordered the shop manual for $80, and I didn't want the little Haynes manual that you get at the automotive store. I wanted the Ford factory manual. So as you've seen in my previous videos, that's what the blue book is. It's a Ford factory manual. Paid $80. I got the volume for the body parts, and I got the volume for all the mechanical, and I have the electrical diagram. I thought, okay, with this, I can keep it on the road. We're going to keep it great, looking great. I then posted this video, the first time I really used that manual and really did actual mechanical work at 122,000 miles. Shortly before that, I just paid it off. I owned it outright, made my last payment, jumped up and down, and said I did it, damn it. I bought a car that I wanted, and I kept that car, and I paid that car off. Now I own it outright. I achieved that goal twice. I really didn't know what was going to be in foreshadowing that, because that was 122,000 miles. And I still kept it, still kept going. Did the brakes, did the HD conversion of the brakes. I said, yes, we're getting there. She still looks great. The paint still has shiny sheen to it. I don't have rust everywhere. The body panels are all the same damn color. The interior still looks great. The seats aren't ripped. The headliner isn't falling down. I was damn proud of myself. This is my pride and joy, materially anyway. My other one is up there doing something with the fence. I don't know what he's doing. In 2019, as I started noticing, I would clean the doors. I'd clean the inside of the door jams when I would detail it. I mean, me detailing this is about 8+ hours. And I take the dash apart, I take the center console apart, I take the seats out, I wipe everything down, I detail the hell out of it. I started noticing that I had rust on the inside of the doors. And I thought, well, let's get on this before it really gets worse. And I learned a few things in 2019 when I was doing that. One, very few places do an actual full body paint job. Even less places do rust repair work. There's collision shops everywhere, but they only work on your vehicle if it was in an auto accident. I went to 3 places to get 3 estimates to have just the rocker panels replaced. And the hatch, because the rear hatch where the hinges are, I said, well, what would it be to get this stuff replaced? Because at that point, it was only the outer rocker panel. The door trim seal was still being held in place. I had one Ford dealership tell me it was $5,000 for both sides. I had another Ford dealership tell me it was $11,000. And then I had an independent shop tell me it was about $3,000. And at the time, I was like, okay, that's pretty good. It gives me a rough idea. But I didn't really act upon it. I didn't think anything of it. I was like, okay, well, maybe I got some time. I can't afford $5,000 right now. I mean, I probably could. I put on a credit card, but I didn't want to go down that hole. I didn't want to go down that road. You fast forward to 2021, that rocker panel, I was detailing the flex, and I opened all the doors, and the door trim, the seal underneath fell to the floor, or fell on the ground. And I tried to put it back up, and it wouldn't stay. And I looked, and the entire outer rocker was gone. It was at that moment that I realized my issue was getting more and more serious. And I had to do something to counteract it. I just didn't know what I was going to do. I then looked at, I went back to the same Ford dealership that was going to do the rockers before for $5,000. I went and got another estimate. But this time, we're in 2021. And I never got a call back from the place, from that dealership ever. I was only there once, and the guy was taking notes, giving me some idea of pricing, and there was no official estimate ever that was ever gave. I went to even another independent body shop, and they never got back with me either, which kind of told me that they didn't want my business. Um, the Ford dealership was saying the rocker is in two parts, the front and the rear. To do both sides, we're probably looking at about $6,000. For the rear aperture, where the hinge is and the rust is, that might be the whole roof skin, and that might be that rear aperture as well. You're probably looking at 10 grand to fix all that, not including the doors and the hatch itself that need to be replaced. He said I was probably about $15,000-$20,000, and he said you might be throwing good money after bad. One thing I didn't think about looking at was where the subframe mounts to the body itself. If those are rusted out as well, I might be up a creek. And I was kind of let down. And that kind of started in motion of the days of owning this Flex might be kind of numbered, because I don't know how much longer I can keep it on the road. Mechanically, I can fix it, but I don't have any body shop experience. I don't know what I'm doing. It's way out of my element. And then I had some other odds and ends that went with it, and that was also why in 2020 I decided to buy my i3, so that way when the Flex did go down for repairs, I knew that when it would take longer than 2 days for me to fix it, and I needed another vehicle to be a backup for transportation just in case. So 2020 I bought my i3. Here we are in 2022, and those rockers are gone. And I was more concerned on getting them replaced because that's also the lifting point. It's the structural point to lift the vehicle up. And I wanted to lift the vehicle up because the engine has got over 100,000 miles on it. It has a knock in the lower part of the engine. I'm not sure what it is. The head gasket, the rear head, where the head mounts to the block and you have the timing cover that goes over that, there's a T-junction right there. Well, that T-junction is known to leak oil. Well, this is leaking oil all down the front of the engine. The transmission needs to come out because it needs rebuilt. It was supposed to be rebuilt at 150,000 miles, and I'm well over that. The PTU in it, the intermediate seal between it and the transmission is leaking, as is the output seal is leaking. So along the passenger CV shaft, I have transmission fluid. So I have to keep an eye on the transmission fluid before I drive it. The center drive shaft is shot. It's original. It's got 200,000 miles on it. The carrier bearings in it are shot. Moving further back, the rear differential is original. The pinion seal is leaking its fluid. And where the two CV axles go into the differential, those seals are shot. The lower control arms and those springs are all original. They're probably shot. The filler neck for the gas tank is original. I spray WD-40 in there about every month and work that flat, but I haven't had any evap coat. But it's leaking where the hose connects to the tank. So I know mechanically I can do this work, but some of it I have to drop the subframe to get, or to do the work. And that requires me having another place to lift my vehicle. Well, the rockers are gone. I'm going to have to replace them to lift the vehicle to do the work that I need to do. And that brings me to where I'm at now. We're in 2022, and the automotive market, the used automotive market, is way in outer space in car pricing. My i3 was $17,000 when I bought it in 2020 with 23,000 miles on it. And this year, BMW was going to offer me $14,000 for it. And I done put 60 plus thousand miles on it already. And they was going to offer me 14 grand to buy it back. The loan was $17,000. I only owe $6,000 on it. The market is whack. And that kind of puts the idea in my head, as much as I wanted to keep this car, as much as I want to make it a historical vehicle, and as much as I want to keep it for showing to my family and driving down the street and getting that head turn look, it may not last that long. And I might have the funds to fix it, but I don't have anywhere to take it to have it fixed. But a part of me also wants to say, well, the hell with that. I can do it. I can teach myself to do it. But cutting wood with a circular saw is not the same as taking a cutoff wheel, opening the door jamb, and cutting out the aperture of this panel where the rockers are, because I'd have to buy the panel and then cut out what I need. If I cut too much, well, then I'm replacing the whole damn panel, and that requires taking this apart and breaking out or drilling out the welds. Then I have to learn how to weld metal together and weld in a whole new aperture. And then I have to learn how to do all the grinding and all the bonding work that may be done. And then I have to learn how to do all the paint to lay paint with a spray gun. None of which I know how to do. And it's not like I have the place to do it. So for the better part of 2022, I've been torn. A part of me wants to sell this vehicle, but a part of me says no, keep it. There's other variables inside of why I want to keep it. I bought this vehicle in 2012 when both my grandma and my great-grandma were still alive. And both of them have been in this vehicle. My grandma passed in 2016. She loved this vehicle. She always said how she liked the seat warmers. And it was so smooth. My great-grandma passed in 2019. She was 103 years old. I don't want to get rid of the only car or the only item that I have that both of them remember me having. I can't let that go. Ironically, on the ride smoothness part, my mom drives a Jeep Wrangler. We go to a fair a couple weeks ago, and she gets in, and she's like, oh, I forgot how smooth this vehicle is. That brought a smile to my face. As old as she is, that somebody can still get in and say, oh, damn, this is a smooth ride. You just can't beat that. Thus, I don't know. I think I'm heavily leaning to that I'm just going to keep it. And the body's going to fall apart of me, and I'm just going to have to deal with it when it happens. There's nothing I can really do about it. I could get a car cover from Amazon maybe and keep it covered. I could go to the automotive store and get that chemical rust converter stuff in an aerosol can and just spray the entire rocker panels to kind of inhibit any more rust growing. But I know there's going to come a point where structurally she's not going to be safe to drive. I just don't know when that day comes. And that's why I'm asking you on your input. Was there ever an item, a vehicle, whatever it may be, in your life that you had to part ways with and you didn't want to for some reason or another? Maybe you had to sacrifice it for, maybe it was totaled in an accident and it was taken from you. Or maybe you're just not there yet, and twice I dropped that. So I'm asking is, if you was in this situation, what would you choose? Would you just keep it, baby it, and repair it when you can? Or right now, while the market is on cloud 9 in Jupiter, offload it. Collect some money while there's still residual value in it, and move on. I'm leaning to just keep it. But I also know keeping it ties up money that I could be using for other things, potentially. But getting rid of it, then I don't have a vehicle to replace it with, because I can't shove a water heater in an i3. I can shove a 2x4 by 8-foot board in the i3. That's some sketchy shit right there. Let me know in the comments. Where do you guys stand? Do you see a vehicle do you see material as something that you want to pass down, that you want to keep and take care of? Or is it just something it's here for now and we're done? You use it, we're done. Use it, we're done. Let me know. If you liked it, hit the button. But if you didn't, I'm sure you'll find a way to let me know.